3, 2, 1.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez accidentally spills the beans. We examine Tucker Carlson's populism, and the border wall war continues. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Oh man, so much to get to today. Wow, a lot of news breaking over the weekend. Plus, as you know, later today, if you are a subscriber over at Daily Wire, then you're going to get 2 extra hours of me every single day. It's going to be unbelievable. We're going to get to all of the news of the day. First, we need to talk about how you send your packages, how you do your mail. So I know that you've been heading down to the post office with this giant box of stuff that you need to send off via the post office. And the post office is great, don't get me wrong, but you know it'd be easier if you didn't have to do that. If you could just sit at your desk and make sure that all of your mail goes out on time with the proper postage. Well, here's the nice thing. You can. We do at the Daily Wire offices. I do from home using Stamps.com. Stamps.com brings all the amazing services of the U.S. Postal Service directly to your computer. Stamps.com is the faster, more convenient way to get postage. Simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send it, and the mail carrier just picks it up. No more lugging mail to the post office, no more hassles. Stamps.com not only saves you time, it also saves you money as well. With Stamps.com, you get discounted postage rates you can't even get at the post office. Not to mention, it is a fraction of the cost of those expensive postage meters. There's no equipment to lease, no long-term commitments. Again, we use it at the Daily Wire offices. It saves us time. It means we don't have to wait in line. It means that we can do exact postage directly from our desks. Right now, you too can enjoy the Stamps.com service with a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Start the new year off right. Go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage. You can check it out there, and type in promo code Shapiro for that special offer. Again, Stamps.com, promo code Shapiro. That gives you a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. So a very solid deal. Okay, so we begin today with a reminder that the Democratic Party has now taken over the House, which means that we have to take them seriously. We are now supposed to take all of their policy prescriptions and all the things they say seriously. And which Democrats should we take seriously? Well, presumably we should take seriously the Democrats that the Democrats are taking seriously. You know, the ones who are considered the new leaders. We should be taking serious stock of the Democrats that the media say are the ones we should be paying attention to. How do we know which ones? Well, let's say that there were a Democrat who'd been ballyhooed as the new wave in the Democratic Party, a Democrat who'd been featured on social media, a Democrat who'd been featured with profiles in Vanity Fair and the New York Times and the Washington Post, a Democrat who was featured on 60 Minutes over the weekend. Would it be fair to pay attention to that person? I think yes. And I think that if people said we shouldn't pay attention to that person, that would be a bit of media sophistry. If the game were to be that Democrats pay attention to a person and we're supposed to ignore that person lest we be accused of being obsessed with that person, that would be a bunch of crap, right? So the person of whom I'm speaking, of course, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, the reason that a lot of folks on the right like to cover Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is because she says dumb things a lot, right? It's not that she says dumb things only sometimes. She says dumb things routinely. Like all the things she says, 90% of the things she says are dumb. The only things she says that are not dumb are things that are pop culturally related. So when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talks about like instant pot recipes on Instagram, not so dumb. When she talks about how she's a pretty good dancer, not so dumb. When she talks about economics, it's like she stuck her head in an oven. Okay, the things she says are just idiotic. And she gets caught out saying idiotic things on a routine basis. But this does not seem to dim her appeal any for Democrats, which leads to an ironic situation. The same Democrats who have accused Donald Trump of lowering the standards of truth and fact, the same Democrats who say that Donald Trump lies on a routine basis about matters of policy, are worshiping at the altar of this brash new persona, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is brash and new precisely because she won 12,000 votes in a Democratic primary in a heavily blue district that is majority minority and where the representative happened to be a white person until Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took over. The racial issue is only interesting insofar as it had an impact on the voting pattern in that primary. Okay, the reason that I bring this up is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on 60 Minutes. Last week, she proposed what she called a Green New Deal. The Green New Deal would have required, within 12 years, 100% of the United States economy to be on renewable energy sources. Right now, only 17% of the U.S. economy is supported by renewable energy sources. So we're talking about the cost of tens of trillions of dollars at a minimum using the current technologies that we have. And if we wanted to develop new technologies, we are probably talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars in order to get to a completely Green New Deal. She also suggested that we should have racial and gender-based equity handled by the Congress of the United States, and that we should raise the tax rates radically. So she did this interview on 60 Minutes because she is the new ideological thought leader, which makes sense. I mean, we've already had the idiocy of watching Bernie Sanders be the ideological thought leader for the Democrats. We've already watched the Democrats trot out a near octogenarian socialist loon bag who's never passed a single piece of decent legislation from Vermont be the ideological thought leader for the Democrats. So why not prettier, dumber Bernie Sanders? How about that? We can go with that, right? So 60 Minutes brings out Ocasio-Cortez, and she says some things about policy. So she begins by pushing a 70% marginal tax rate. This is her big policy proposal, is that what we should do is we should pay for her Green New Deal, which, as I say, would cost tens of trillions of dollars by, you guessed it, taxing rich people more.
When you have a progressive tax rate system, your tax rate, let's say from $0 to $75,000 may be 10% or 15%, et cetera. But once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. That doesn't mean all $10 million are taxed at an extremely high rate, but it means that as you climb up this ladder, you should be contributing more.
Okay, this is like watching my 4-year-old daughter explain basic addition to me. I mean that she has like a certain amount of kind of baseline understanding, but she doesn't really get it. I like that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is explaining to Anderson Cooper, who I promise you pays the top marginal tax rate. She's explaining how marginal tax bracket works to Anderson Cooper on national television. This is the new wave of the Democratic Party. You see, like when you get up to like the very tippy top and the toppity tiptoes, and when you get to like the $10 millionth dollar, that's taxed at a different rate than like if you made $5. Yes, Alexandria, we know. And it's still immoral to steal 70% of a dollar that somebody makes for your own private purposes. Also, the notion that this is going to pay for virtually anything is nuts. She basically says, okay, if you make over $10 million, then we should tax all of that at a 70% rate. And one of my favorite things about this is that people in the Democratic Party are then repeating this. No, it's not that bad. Like, why would that be so bad? There's a thread on Twitter. This had 75,000 retweets from a person named Diana Anderson. I don't know who this person is. This person wrote, okay, so a lot of rich white folks are freaking out about what a 70% tax rate on the wealthy would look like. And they're scared about it and bleep, even though it's literally what rich baby boomers already dealt with. First of all, rich baby boomers did not deal with it. They had massive tax loopholes that were applicable during the Eisenhower era when the top tax bracket, starting at about $3.4 million jointly for households, was at 91%. The effective tax rate for those households was about 45%. Here's what this person says, though. They say, post-World War II, the tax rate peaked at 94% on annual income over $200,000. This is post-World War II, you will remember, when we were still paying off, a massive military spend. By the way, $200,000 in 1946 was like $3 million in 2018. In the decades following, it dropped to a marginal tax rate of 70% of all income over $200,000 annually. Yes, and if you'll recall, the 1970s sucked economically before Ronald Reagan massively cut the top marginal tax rate. And this person says, let's take an example of what would happen if we had a 70% income tax rate for people making above $10 million. So let's say you're Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You made $65 million last year in 1 year. So that $10 million cutoff is going to hit you. 70% off everything above $10 million. That leaves you with $16.5 million. Wow, that's a big hit, you think. On paper, yeah, that's a lot of money to just give up in taxes. No, not on paper. In reality, giving up $45 million is a lot of money to give up. But this person says that rate still leaves The Rock with nearly $20 million, considering his $10 million is also taxed at a lower rate. That's $20 million in net pay for a year, which is still a lot of money. So what's The Rock whining about? Here's why this is so intensely stupid. The reason that this is so intensely stupid is because everyone will start using tax avoidance strategies. How do I know this? Because France tried to do exactly this. Okay, a few years back, let's go back in the Wayback Machine to like 2017, like 2 years ago. The Prime Minister of France was a guy named Edouard Philippe. Okay, and he had tried to impose, along with Emmanuel Macron, economic reforms that would have led to a massive wealth tax. And what happened? All the millionaires left France. In 2016, 12,000 millionaires immigrated from France. In 2015, 10,000 millionaires left France. It turns out, you know what rich people are really good at? Picking up and moving. It turns out that rich people, if you try to tax them at a 70% rate above $10 million, you know what they'll do? They will just sell their houses and leave and go live in Monte Carlo If you think The Rock is sticking around to watch 40 million bucks of his disappear every year so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can pay off her green Solyndra supporters, you are out of your damned mind. You're crazy. It's not going to happen. And even the Washington Post basically acknowledges this. They do a full economic workup. This is my favorite part. I love this. This is what they say. They say, Ocasio-Cortez's suggestion for nearly doubling taxes on people earning more than $10 million would bring in $720 billion per decade, $72 billion a year. Except that, that's not what's going to happen. Here's it buried deep in this article from the Washington Post. The real number is probably smaller than that, because wealthy Americans would probably find ways around paying this much higher tax. You think? You think maybe The Rock just wouldn't do as many movies? I wouldn't work as hard if I knew 70% of my money were going to the federal government. Already an enormous amount of my money goes to the federal government. You think I would take on extra jobs just so I could pay the bills for the stupid ideas of our Congress people? There's something deeply immoral about stealing 70% of any dollar that anyone makes. And if you think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez knows how to spend her money better than The Rock knows how to spend his money, I don't know what to tell you. I'm with Cardi B. I don't know what the government does with my bleeping money, and neither do you. And the fact that the federal government is now trying to seize that money and people are cheering this on is nuts. So this is the new Democratic push, is that they are going to massively raise taxes. Yeah, go with that. I also love the baseline lie that is being told here, which is that if you raise the top marginal tax bracket 70%, that's going to pay for everything. You crazy? It ain't. And people in Denmark are paying 60% of their income off the top in income tax if you make above $60,000 a year. You want to pay for Bernie Sanders-like programs, you can have Bernie Sanders-like taxes. And those Bernie Sanders-like taxes do not look like a top marginal tax bracket increase. They look like a massive middle class and lower class tax increase because you must expand the tax base. If you do not expand the tax base, you're not going to take in more income. But that wasn't the dumbest thing Ocasio-Cortez said. She really spilled the beans here, and I'll explain in just 1 second. First, let's talk about how you can make your business better. So how can you make your business better? Well, you probably have a couple of employees who are, low down on the ladder, or maybe you need somebody better, but you're not sure how to find them. Or maybe you don't need to kick anybody out. Maybe you just need better employees. You're expanding because the economy's been good. Well, ZipRecruiter is the way for you to get the best employees. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire to hire the right people. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter finds qualified candidates for you. It has powerful matching technology. They scan thousands of resumes to identify people with the right skills, education, and experience, and then actively invite them to apply to your job so you get qualified candidates fast. That's why ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the United States. That rating comes from hiring sites on Trustpilot with over 1,000 reviews. Right now, my listeners can get ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. The process is really easy. The website is super usable. And again, it helps you file out all of the bad resumes so that you're only looking at the good ones. If you love the show, show your support for the show and ZipRecruiter by going to ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire, DAILYWIRE. That's ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter is indeed the smartest way to hire, which is why we use it at Daily Wire. Go check it out, ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. All right, so that was not the dumbest thing Ocasio-Cortez had to say, but we're not supposed to talk about the dumb thing she says again because she's good at Instagram and she dances sometimes. Ooh, hoo, 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 hoo. So we can't talk about that stuff. Let's talk instead about how charming she is. It's amazing. If you're a Democrat and you're charming, doesn't matter how dumb you are. Doesn't matter how many stupid things you say. If you're a Republican and you're dumb, doesn't matter how charming you are. And if you're a Republican who is both charming and smart, then we call you corrupt. Dan Crenshaw. I mean, let's just take, you want to see media bias in a nutshell. Dan Crenshaw is a war veteran who lost an eye in combat, is clever, is witty, was great when he went on Saturday Night Live. Has he received 1/100th of the media attention that this 29-year-old former bartender socialist from New York is receiving? Like 1 iota? And Dan Crenshaw doesn't say dumb things all the time. And he actually has a record of service. And he happens to be smart. But, if you're the media, then none of that matters, right? If you're the media, the only thing that matters is that she's a Democrat. And because she's a Democrat, we have to give her all sorts of leeway. And if you attack her, if you say that her ideas are bad, then this is because you are a sexist. Just the same way that if you say Elizabeth Warren is a charmless hack, then this is because you are also a sexist. Because if you talk about likability, but you're talking about a Democrat, this means that you're a racist or a sexist or a bigot in some way. Okay, so the dumbest thing that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said was so dumb on the 60 Minutes interview that even Anderson Cooper looked at her and almost vomited in her lap. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was asked specifically about the fact that she says a lot of things that are not true, that in common parlance, she lies a lot. And she will just trot out arguments that make no sense. She will say things that are blatantly, factually false. Listen to her response, because it is telling about the ways so many folks on the political left think about what politics is, and it explains why younger generation folks are turning socialist. What she's about to say is a sign of deep immorality, deep philosophical immorality. But she says it with a straight face, and so we take it seriously.
I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
But being factually correct is important.
It's absolutely important. And whenever I make a mistake, I say, okay, this was clumsy. And then I restate what my point was. But it's not the same thing as the president lying about immigrants. It's not the same thing at all.
Yeah, it is. So what she says there is that feelings don't matter about your facts, right? My slogan is facts don't care about your feelings. For her, feelings don't care about your facts. So if she's morally right, she can lie, she can get facts wrong. We shouldn't worry about her being semantically or factually accurate. We shouldn't worry about any of those things. Accuracy is of no consequence when what you're saying is morally right. So you might say that we should take her seriously, but not literally. Now, I was informed by Democrats that Donald Trump had lowered the standards of the presidency when it came to truth. I was informed by Democrats that Donald Trump had destroyed our politics because he says a lot of things that are factually untrue. And I've said in the past that when Donald Trump says things that are factually untrue, that he should correct them, and that he's wrong, and that sometimes he's lying, and that that's bad. But Democrats don't actually care about all that. What Democrats actually care about is the narrative. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when she says facts don't actually matter, what matters is being morally right, this shows why we are in the state that we are. She is not actually saying anything different from what Democrats have said for years, for literally my entire lifetime. Democrats have been saying my entire lifetime that it is okay to lie so long as you get to the end point that you are seeking. If you are Barack Obama, you can lie about liking your doctor and keeping your doctor because the ends justify the means. The ends are morally right. Therefore, the means, not telling the truth to the American people, that's okay too. So when Ocasio-Cortez says, I don't have time to tell the truth, people worry too much about me being factually accurate instead of morally right. One of the ways we decide whether you are morally right is if you are factually accurate. It's pretty easy to tell. If somebody's lying all the time to you to get you to do something, pretty obvious giveaway that what they're trying to get you to do is probably not morally right, because the truth shall set us free. When we hear a group of facts that are laid together to form an argument, then it is inherently more convincing than a group of lies that are put together to form an endpoint if we know they are lies. If you have to lie to get somebody to identify with your conclusion, then you are not only doing it wrong, you are doing something immoral itself. There are certain cases in life where lying is necessary. And there's certainly the Nazis at your door, and you've got somebody who's a resistor to the Nazis hiding in your basement. Do you lie to the Nazi? The typical moral answer would be yes, although Kant would say no. That is not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about here is basically lying to the American people because you think that your point is better than their point. And this is what the Democrats are doing these days. I don't like it when Republicans do it. I don't like it when Democrats do it. I don't like it when Donald Trump says things that are not true about the economy or about immigration or about the state of the Middle East. I don't like when he does any of those things to support his political viewpoint. It's no better when a Democrat does it. But to pretend that the standard has only been lowered on one side is a joke. The standard has been lowered on both sides for years, and it was lowered by Democrats a lot earlier than it was lowered for Republicans. She just let the cat out of the bag. So spare me your lectures about Donald Trump undermining American politics. The same left that disdains Donald Trump for his supposed abolition of basic principles of the presidency, that same left cheers on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez every step of the way. That same left tells us that Barack Obama never had a scandal. That same left says that Barack Obama never told a lie. That same left says that Bill Clinton should still be held up as some sort of halcyon of the presidency and that his wife should have won in 2016. I'm not going to take moral guidance from these folks. Just not going to happen. And I'm certainly not going to listen to Democrats when they also claim that they actually want to compromise, that Donald Trump is the one standing in the way of compromise. And this becomes particularly galling when you're hearing it about the wall. So the Democrats are claiming now they don't want to compromise, or that Donald Trump doesn't want to compromise, that they'd love to reach a compromise, but Trump won't compromise. Again, Ocasio-Cortez, she just says things that are inadvertently true. Like Democrats don't care about the truth, and also we'd like to tax the crap out of you. She also says Democrats have compromised too much in the past. She can't name a compromise. Like, name a Democratic compromise of the last, say, 15 years. The last time Republicans and Democrats compromised on a bill, honestly, maybe sequestration, even that was not really a compromise. That was like 2011. So that was 8 years ago now. But she says Democrats have compromised too much. And there's something, I think, deeply telling about the fact that she thinks that Democrats have compromised too much when she can't name a single Democratic compromise in the last 10 years.
We as a party have compromised too much, and we've lost too much of who we're supposed to be and who we are. And
the Democratic Party has lost too much.
think so. I think we've compromised things that we shouldn't have compromised, whether it's judgeships with Mitch McConnell, whether it's compromising on climate change. I think there are some things that we've compromised a little bit too much on.
Okay, they have not compromised on judgeships. Harry Reid nuked the filibuster, and Mitch McConnell has rammed through judges. And on climate change, Democrats have not compromised one iota. They just haven't had the power to get through their radical agenda. So again, just a bunch of nonsense. But it does demonstrate where the Democratic Party's head is at. They are radical. They don't care about truth when it comes to, at least if she's a representative of them. I'm not saying every Democrat. There are a lot of Democrats out there, I assume, who are still caring about truth, who would still like some compromise, who would still like some moderation, but not in the leadership. Not in the leadership, because Pelosi can't step on Ocasio-Cortez because she knows the passions with Ocasio-Cortez in the same way that the leadership couldn't step on Bernie Sanders because they knew that the passion was with Bernie Sanders. So what does this lead to? Well, it leads to the government shutdown that's happening over the border wall. So let's talk about the latest on the border wall in just 1 second. First, let's talk about how you protect your property. Well, the way that you ought to protect your property is with Ring. Today, over 1 million people are using the amazing Ring video doorbell to help protect their homes. Ring knows home security begins at the front door. It does not end there. So now they are extending that same level of security to the rest of your home with the Ring Floodlight Cam. And just like Ring's amazing video doorbell, Floodlight Cam is a motion-activated camera and floodlight. It connects directly to your phone with HD video and two-way audio that lets you know the moment anyone steps on your property. You can see and speak to visitors. You can even set off an alarm directly from your phone. With Ring's Floodlight Cam, when things go bump in the night, you will immediately know what it is, whether you're home or away. The Ring Floodlight Cam lets you keep an eye on your home from anywhere. So go check it out. We have a Ring Floodlight Cam at our house, or at least a Ring video doorbell at our house. And it's great. I'm 3,000 miles away, but everybody thinks that I'm home specifically because I can pick up the Ring and I can tell people that I'm at home so nobody's robbing my house. Ring Floodlight Cam offers the ultimate in in-home security with high visibility floodlights and a powerful HD camera that puts security in your hands. Save up to $150 off a Ring of Security kit when you go to ring.com/Ben. Again, that's ring.com/Ben. Go check it out right now, ring.com/Ben. Ring is well worth your time. It's going to make your house safer, make you feel more secure. Ring.com/Ben. Okay, so the Democratic intransigence that has been pushed forth by the Democratic base is exactly what I predicted last year and what anybody who's been watching the Democratic Party predicted last year. This is not a party that was going to come in and be reasonable. This was a party that was going to come in and push the most radical agenda they could and refuse to compromise on anything. So Donald Trump has asked for something like $5 billion for a border wall, which, let's face it, would not be sufficient to actually build the border wall. The actual cost of a border wall apparently is between $11 and $13 billion, not $5 billion. In any case, $5 billion is a pittance compared to what we spend every year on virtually everything else. And we do, in fact, have a border problem. Huge numbers of people are coming across the border. In 2015, this is according to the Washington Post, the year Donald Trump launched his White House bid with a promise to build a wall on the Mexico border, illegal migration to the United States plunged 31%, falling near its lowest levels in 50 years. In 2017, President Trump's first year in office, he continued to insist on the urgent need for a border wall, even as illegal crossings dropped even further. With parts of the federal government shut down over what has morphed into a defining symbol of Trump's presidency, administration officials are clamoring louder than ever. Only this time, they face a bona fide emergency on the border. This is according to the Washington Post. Okay, not the Washington Times, the Washington Post. And they're struggling to make the case there's truly a problem. Record numbers of migrant families are streaming into the United States, overwhelming border agents and leaving holding cells dangerously overcrowded with children, many of whom are falling sick. In a letter to lawmakers on Friday, the White House and Department of Homeland Security made a fresh appeal to amend immigration laws they denounced as legal loopholes and blamed for creating a border security and humanitarian crisis. But this is not going to happen so long as Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats refuse to compromise. Now, that humanitarian crisis is not being created only by the lack of a border wall. It's also being created by our immigration procedures, which require us to arrest people, and then people have to go to an immigration court. And while they're not in an immigration court, we either have to imprison them or let them go, which would be catch and release. All of that is a mess, and cleaning that up should be top priority. But Democrats are not interested in cleaning up any of this, and they are particularly anti the idea of a wall because they don't want Trump to have a victory. So you end up with idiocies like this. Nancy Pelosi, out front and center, saying that the wall itself is immoral. This is what she said last week.
The fact
wants to cut a
A
deal.
wall is an immorality. It's not who we are as a nation. And this is not a wall between Mexico and the United States that the president is creating here. It's a wall between reality and his constituents, his supporters.
What the hell does that mean? A wall between reality and his supporters? How? How? I love that nobody in the media just asks how. Explain. And when she says this isn't a wall between the U.S. and Mexico, that is literally what it is. A wall between the United States and Mexico. Some sort of physical barrier that allows our Border Patrol agents to know when people are crossing illegally. And why this is immoral in any way, Democrats have yet to explain. I love that they can just shout slogans like, it's immoral and it's not who we are. Whenever a politician assures you it's not who we are, be aware that all they are trying to do is shame you into not asking the question, why? Why is it not who we are to protect our own border? Why? I will imagine there are certain things that make us not who we are, right? Imprisoning children, not who we are, because that's not who we are. But building a wall on the border, that's not who we are. President Trump responds by saying, we would like a steel barrier, please. This isn't that tough. He tweeted out, VP Mike Pence and group had a productive meeting with the Schumer-Pelosi representatives today. Many details of border security were discussed. We are now planning a steel barrier rather than concrete. It is both stronger and less obtrusive, good solution and made in the USA. I don't know why Trump thinks this comes across like a compromise. Obviously, it does not come across as a compromise. Nonetheless, he is trotting out members of his administration to claim that it is. Mick Mulvaney, who is his new chief of staff, was on Meet the Press, and he said that President Trump is compromising by shifting from a wall to a fence, which is not actually a compromise, but here he is.
The fences that we have built on the southern border, the ones that were already there under Republican leadership, Democrat leadership, they're in San Diego, they're in El Paso, more than 90% effective in preventing criminal immigration. We need more of that. Do we need it from coast to coast, 2,000 miles all the way across? No, and the president has admitted as such. There are places in the middle of nowhere where technology will be better. But a barrier, call it a wall, call it a fence, the president actually said he didn't care what you call it. He even offered to let the Democrats help him design something. He says as long as it's effective, he doesn't care what you call it. We need something to prevent people from coming into this country illegally.
The president isn't wrong on this, and Mick Mulvaney is not wrong on this. I will say that the tactics that are being used by both sides here are obviously pandering to their respective bases. So when it comes to the Democrats, they are pandering to their base by saying we don't need a barrier of any kind, that walls themselves are an imposition. Ooh, it's so terrible. Eric Swalwell, who wants to run for president for some odd reason, he tweeted out that a wall separates us and them. Right, like citizens and people trying to get in illegally. Correct, Eric Swalwell. And then he said that's not who we are in the U.S. Literally, that's how you define a nation, is by separating us from them. That doesn't mean that them are bad, but it does mean that you have to separate populations. Otherwise, you don't know who's a citizen and who is not a citizen. So Democrats are pandering to their most radical base. And then President Trump is pandering to his base in the sense that he should have done this immediately upon entering office. He had a Republican Congress, he had a Republican Senate. Holding his own Senate's feet to the fire would have been a better move than trying to hold Nancy Pelosi's feet to the fire. Now President Trump is supposedly considering using emergency powers to build the wall. According to CNN on Friday, President Trump said he was considering using emergency powers, which would allow him to use military funding to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. He said, I can do it if I want. He said, we can call a national emergency because of the security. I haven't done it. I may do it, but we can call a national emergency and build it very quickly. So presumably, he would be talking about invoking two separate laws. One is 10 U.S. Code Section 284, support for counter-drug activities and activities to counter transnational organized crime. That provision says that the Secretary of Defense may provide support for the counter-drug activities or activities to counter transnational organized crime of any department or agency of the federal government if such support is requested by the official responsible for the counter-drug activities or by the appropriate state officials. And this could amount to the maintenance and repair of equipment that has been used to stop such drug-related activity. So it's never been invoked in this way, that you have somebody on the border and then they say to the president, we need border wall, please misdirect funding from other Department of Defense priorities to the wall because of counter-drug activity. Also, it would be kind of a stretch to suggest that this would fall under maintenance or repair or upgrading of equipment. That usually amounts to, making the equipment better, not building an entirely new barrier that spans thousands of miles of United States border. Legally speaking, it would be difficult for the president to do this, nor really should he, because we don't want the president routinely using national emergency powers to do stuff he can't otherwise get congressional approval for. 10 U.S. Code 2808 is the other one that he theoretically could use. This is construction authority in the event of a declaration of war or national emergency. This is what he's talking about with a national emergency. Under this provision of U.S. law, in the event of a declaration of war or the declaration by the president of a national emergency in accordance with the National Emergencies Act that requires the use of the armed forces, the Secretary of Defense, without regard to any other provision of law, may undertake military construction projects. This has only been used in the aftermath of 9/11 to build up military bases in certain areas, and it's supposed to be an emergency use, right? It's supposed to be that Congress just hasn't had time to consider.
Well, as you can see, I have sustained a serious life-threatening injury. That's what happened over the weekend. If you're listening on iTunes, there's a Band-Aid.
The reprioritization of defense funding. It is not really supposed to be a way of overruling Congress when Congress doesn't want to do something. Listen, again, I'm in favor of the wall. I'm in favor of Trump putting pressure on Congress over the wall. I'm in favor of Trump saying that he's happy to shut down the government. I don't really care about it.
That's what I'm referring to. It's kind of a funny story, actually. My wife was out of the house on Saturday, and she was going to meet a friend who had come into town. And I decided while she was out of town that I was going to spend
any of that. What I do care about is you don't get to expand the national emergency powers of the executive branch without understanding that Democrats will do exactly the same thing the other way. Wait until the shoe's on the other foot and Democrats declare that they are going to have to build out some sort of facility.
my time trying to whittle an arrow out of a stick.
You don't want them to build out some national surveillance facility that you don't want them to build out because Congress won't give them what they want and it's a national emergency. Wait until they do that. Expanding the powers of the presidency is never a good idea, even when you think that the president is somebody of your party who's doing something that you like. This would be struck down in court, and it should be struck down in court. Now, in just a second, I want to talk about an ideological rift that's broken out inside the Republican Party that I think is really deeply, deeply important. It's because of a monologue Tucker Carlson gave that brings it up. I want to get to this. I really think it may be the most important thing that we talk about today. But first, let's talk about your investment strategy. So you don't know all that much about investment, right? I mean, you're kind of a newbie to the market, and you've never really tried investing before. Well, the best way to try investing is to start investing, and the best way to start investing is by using the Robinhood app. Why? Because Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. Folks in my office are using Robinhood all the time. They've shown me the app. It is clear. It is beautiful. It is easy to use. You can make a trade with like 3 clicks, and they have a no commission fee structure, which means that while other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, which could be cutting out your entire profit margin, depending on how much you're trading, Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. You trade stocks and you keep all your profits. They have easy to understand charts, market data. You place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. Their Robinhood web platform also lets you view stock collections like 100 most popular, entertainment, social media. And you can learn how to invest as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies. Robinhood is giving my listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio today. Sign up at shapiro.robinhood.com. That's shapiro.robinhood.com. Again, I've looked at the app. It is beautifully designed. I mean, really clear, really easy. And folks in my office are using it to learn how to trade. Shapiro.robinhood.com. Go check it out right now, shapiro.robinhood.com, and get that special deal of free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. Okay, I want to get to what I think is actually the most important section of today's show, which is Tucker Carlson's take on populism and the debate that's now broken out on the right over the role of government in American life and in the economy. But first, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. So, today, it begins. Starting today, the Ben Shapiro Show is rolling out 2 more hours of me. Okay, you can listen live on radio in a bunch of markets across the country, but only subscribers will be able to get the full 3-hour show on demand, meaning my podcast and the 2 additional hours we're doing a little bit later this afternoon. So make sure to subscribe to dailywire.com right now. It's just $9.99 a month. It means you get all the old episodes, and it means you get all the new episodes. Like, you really will not be able to get this stuff, right? Even if you're in a big talk radio market where my show is broadcast, you're not going to be in the car all 2 hours that it's broadcast live, plus the first hour, which is the podcast, right? You're not going to get all 3 hours in the car unless you're a truck driver or something, which is great. But most people are not going to be able to do that. And that means that really what you ought to be doing is going and subscribing so you can get all the hours on demand whenever you want them, and you can see the clips. And we're going to be doing a thing as the time rolls forward where we take your subscriber questions during some of the breaks. It's going to be a blast, and we have all sorts of new goodies coming up for you this year. That's $9.99 a month. I mean, we are slaving out here for you people. All you have to do is subscribe. Go check it out. I mean, Senya is getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, my producer, to make sure that you have the content that you need. The least you can do is pay for her coffee. She's a charming person. I promise you. Senya's a wonderful person. How dare you, sir, not pay for her coffee? In any case, $99 a year gets you all of those aforementioned glories, plus this, the very greatest in all beverage vessels. View it. Feast your eyes upon it. The leftist tears, hot or a cold tumbler. Magnificent, bottled and sold to you at that low, low annual price, $99 a year. Also, please subscribe to us over at YouTube, over at iTunes. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.